Hello everyone, welcome to GGN. Today's Friday, September 27th, 2013. I'm Darko. Like I mentioned in my first video, that this is going to really be news. It's just going to be some of the stuff that's been going on, the biggest issues in the news that I've seen. I haven't really even been looking at the news, to be honest with you. So, but all hostages believed evacuated from Nairobi Mall, government says. So what we are aware of is that General Wesley Clark mentioned, I don't think it's because he's a good guy. I think he just may have been somehow indirectly came across this information. Maybe he's part of the scumbags. But basically, remember the U.S. planned invasion of 7 countries back in 2001. And we have what? Iraq, check. Libya, check. Somalia, check. Remember they formed a transitional government. Lebanon, they say check. See assassination of Rafik Hariri and the Cedar Revolution. Sudan, check. Southern Sudan became a sovereign state, July 2011. Then you have Syria currently in progress, and Iran, and of course that's always building up. So there you go, right? Now, why am I mentioning that? Well, because Kenya was tied to what? Al-Shabaab. Now, there's been a lot of links with being drawn by the West between Al-Shabaab and Al-Qaeda. It says here a Kenyan government spokesman says security forces may have evacuated all the hostages who were held captive by Somalia's Al-Shabaab fighters inside a partly Israeli-owned shopping mall in Nairobi. I thought this was interesting because basically with Syria, they're done, right? That's how I felt too. I felt like, Syria was done, right? They're done for. Once Assad agreed to the weapons deal between the good guy, bad guy routine between Russia and the United States, that was it. They basically put themselves in a corner. They put themselves in checkmate as far as the chess game goes. So, will Syria's weapons agreement last? Of course, you've seen all this crap coming out. Says here, they say here that Syria has been handed a lifeline. I don't think it was a lifeline, right? See how they play that? It wasn't a lifeline. It was a gun to shoot themselves. So, and now they're just gonna play it out, right? Will the agreement last? Why did they agree? They didn't have to agree. What about Israeli chemical weapons? What about U.S. chemical weapons? Why do they have to give up their weapons? Why is that even the issue? The issue should be, was there a weapons attack? There's evidence showing that there was no weapons attack, that the one that they're talking about. What about the prior attacks? Those did occur. Those were carried out by the Western-backed rebels. So they're done, right? They're done with Arabia and Syria. Henry Kissinger predicts Syria will comply with 90% of chemical weapons deal, right? They won't leave much of a choice. But Syria's Assad slams Western powers on UN draft resolution. So now Assad, he's all of a sudden he's bashing the UN Security Council, and he's in a corner now, and now he's gonna try to carry out this verbal war, right? He's gonna be trying to defend himself by making these statements and stuff like that, But it sucks because there's nothing he can do now because nobody will believe him. It's all about chemical weapons. That will overshadow any intelligent argument that this man makes. He says, I am not concerned since its independence. Syria has been committed to all the treaties that is signed. We will honor everything that we have agreed to. Well, it doesn't really matter. You know what I mean? They don't care about honoring agreements. They arm terrorists. I mean, he knows this. So, these people will stab you in the back. And the UN just sat there as your civilians were getting killed by these Western-backed terrorists. So my point is that they were winning. For whatever it's worth, they were winning. They were losing. The Arabian people were losing because it was creating a tremendous amount of refugees. It was Arabs killing Arabs. So in that sense, it was a racial type of genocide carried out by outside forces, or basically being orchestrated by outside forces. So the Arab people lost, but the state of Syria was actually winning. So Here you go. You see this article: war-weary Syrians find a new home in Sweden. I saw something else about, Save the Children. It's this organization that usually puts non-white children on the cover and says, help the poor children. Of course, if you donate to them and you don't want to donate to them anymore, they won't leave you alone. You unsubscribe from their emails. They keep sending you stuff, and they fill your mailbox with mail. So, but my point is that they were saying, oh, help the Syrian people, right? Help the Syrian people. So all this money is going to be flowing around from charitable organizations, and basically these Nordic countries and Europe are going to take in of these different types of cultures. Well, nothing against Muslims, nothing against Arabs. It's just that this further it destroys their own people, but at the same time destroys European people and destroys their culture. So these people have been bombed out of their country by, quote, white nations, but really there are no more white nations. Yes, they may be a majority still, but wait about 20 years, 30 years, they won't be. They'll be way below that. The point I'm trying to make is that these are countries that are occupied usually by a fanatical group. They all have their own interests. Yes, there's Zionists and Jews ahead of them, Talmudic Jews, but there's all kinds of. There's the people that just want to profit. I hear I like 108 Morse's videos, but at the same time he'll say I can't stand when people, or I can't believe people say it's about the resources, and I say, well, yeah, it's about all kinds of things. Yes, the main thing is to basically kill people's culture, to kill their sovereignty, and the way they do that is by race mixing, I think personally, and that basically is their way of having people not have anything to fight for, their heritage, their culture, their identity, and so that's why they do it. But they need somebody to carry it out. They need something to fund it, to fund this whole operation. The way they do that is the spoils of war, right? Which is, they tell all these radical Salafists, Wahhabists coming out of Saudi Arabia and all around the world that you're going to get your own kingdom or your own whatever, Salafate. And so they go do that. They arm them with cash. They even say, they'll probably maybe even give them their oil. Who knows? But the thing is that what's going to pay for these operations? It's going to be the resources. You can't say that resources are not a part of this. It is part of it. It's just not really the main reason. They're trying to socially destroy the planet and morally. So when I've been covering the news, I've also noticed in Somalia, I haven't really been covering Somalia as much because in Africa in general. I want to make that point to GGN viewers here. Why haven't I covered Africa more? Well, because it doesn't change. There's no news. Syria was kind of news, right? In different parts there's news. With Africa, it's not news when Africans are killing Africans, when there's these puppet governments, they call them democracies, that are basically fighting against these rebels or these people, these indigenous people, or people who don't want to be a part of the system, the Western system, which basically enslaves people and stuff. It detaches them from their resources, their ability to be self-sustainable. That's what it's all about. So as long as Africans were killing Africans, and people were getting diseased, everything was going as planned. And it's funny because before this Kenya thing happened, I was talking about it with somebody that I know about how in Africa they have all of their systems going right now, all at play. In South America, that's degrading. In Russia, you have Putin. He's not a nationalist. He doesn't care about the Russian people. He's gonna destroy their culture eventually. He's just telling them what they want to hear. Same in China, they'll come for them too. But in Africa, they're done with Arabia after Syria, and now they're moving to Africa to maybe speed it up a little bit more. Usually, just like I said, they've had famine, they've had disease, and they've just had the usual kind of Africans killing Africans. So maybe now it's time to ratchet it up, right? Sudan is now in the news. Sudan summons U.S. envoy over President Bashir's visa. They summoned the U.S. chargé d'affaires in Khartoum to protest against Washington's failure to give whatever. The story itself isn't all that exciting, but Sudan is in the news, right? It's kind of this little war going on because they didn't give this guy a visa to attend the UN General Assembly. It's like, who gives a shit about the UN General Assembly like Assad? Why is he even talking about him? They're illegitimate, right? Tunisia. Remember, I've been covering about Tunisia and about Morocco and Algeria. I have been covering that. So as far as that goes, I have been covering Africa, just mostly North Africa, because that's kind of the beachhead. And so, yeah, Tunisia, they've all been in the news. Tunisia's trade union body announced massive protests on last Sunday, to force out the government, accusing the Islamist-led coalition of delaying crisis talks on the country's political future. So whether it's religion, whether it's politics, whether it's the economy, these are all mechanisms that are used to enslave people, to detach them from the resources, and to separate them from each other. A couple of things that I thought was interesting as far as conspiracy-wise was that it was an Israeli mall. Then you got Israeli advisors helping Kenya in mall siege. So Israeli security source says Israeli advisors helping in formulation of strategy to end terrorist siege. The other thing I wonder too was that how you had the Navy shipyard shooting with that Aaron Alexis, whatever, basically a black guy. I don't know if he was actually African. I think he was American, but. And then all of a sudden his picture was all over, and then all of a sudden the Kenya shooting happened. All of a sudden you see these black guys in the shooting and stuff like that. It kind of just took people's attention from that to that and fear-based it. Then of course you had another mall shooting just recently as well. Also, what I wasn't surprised by, maybe some other people were, but last Friday, Eric Haroun, Phoenix vet who fought Syrian regime, suddenly gets a plea deal, sweet plea deal. So the 30-year-old Phoenix native faced a possible sentence of life in prison after the Justice Department accused him of fighting in Syria on behalf of al-Qaeda. Amid doubt of those allegations, Haroun suddenly agreed to a plea deal yesterday, and his sentence is quite a bit shorter than life in prison. He'll be released from jail. He'll be placed on probation for 3 years and has to pay a $100 fine. So how about that? $100 fine, released from prison. Remember his dad saying, "Oh yeah, I think he was he was saying something about he's working for the CIA. He's a patriot." I said maybe, when I saw them actually taking it serious and they were going to arrest him, I'm like, well, maybe they're going to let him go into jail, right? Maybe build up some street credibility with these basically whatever terrorists, and then that way when they can send him back and he can actually lead brigades, he can actually work for whatever the agency. He can work for Z Corporation, formerly known as Blackwater, whatever, right? It's a white face that's being trusted by these Arabs. And again, this is part of that Judeo-Christian alliance, which really, it needs to end. It shouldn't exist. And it's like I mentioned before, referring to Albert Pike's letter to that Mazzini guy. What we're kind of looking at is that it's these what people call Luciferians. I'm not really sure about the whole religious aspects of a Satan or a hell or any of that, but there seems to be some kind of darker, more negative types of entities that these people worship or are part of. They have some kind of order that they can all agree on, and they're very efficient at it. But my point is that he was writing in there how they would pit different people against each other. They created these religions in order to destroy all of their opposition. So they created all the Christianity, what my friend refers to as the Abrahamic religions. It's Judaism, Christianity, Islam, and they'll pit them all against each other like they do, and they'll destroy all of each other. And of course the atheists, because they've lost touch with each other truly as a tribe, and they've lost touch with nature. That's the main thing. They've lost touch with nature and the one true creator, that they'll be hopeless, they'll be lost, and they'll blame that on, and then they'll basically be nihilists or atheists, And then they'll say, oh, as it gets really, really bad and horrible, they'll blame that on atheism, they'll reject that, and they'll have nowhere to go. And then they'll accept this Luciferian ideology. And I like this article's title, Ex-Guantanamo detainee dies while fighting Assad in Syria. He's a fallen fighter, a rebel leader. But just a few years ago, he was a terrorist, so thank you.